You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID.
Wow. I mean, that is a dramatic statement, right? Back in 2004, Boris Johnson made it incredibly clear where he stood on national ID cards. And this quote, it just perfectly captures how passionate and how personal this whole debate has always been in Britain. It's a fight that's been happening for decades, and guess what? It's back, this time in digital form.
So today, we're going to dive headfirst into one of Britain's most heated topics, the renewed push for a mandatory national digital ID. It's a debate that really pits the promise of, slick, modern efficiency against the peril of a surveillance state. Okay, so what are we actually talking about when we say mandatory digital ID? Because this isn't just another login for a website. Think of it more like a government-issued digital key to your life. The really crucial bits are that it's mandatory, it links everything you do to one single number, and you need it for basic things like seeing a doctor, getting a job, or even opening a bank account.
To really get our heads around this, we're going to break it down into 4 parts. First, we'll look at the promise, why supporters say this is an absolute necessity for the modern world. Then we'll explore the dangers of what some are calling a database state. After that, we'll look at the very real risk of leaving vulnerable people behind. And finally, we'll tackle the big one. Could this turn Britain into a checkpoint society?
All right, so first up, let's explore the case for digital ID. Proponents, everyone from business leaders to major think tanks, they argue this isn't about control. They say it's about catching up, making life simpler, and solving some of the country's really big problems.
And what's really interesting here is that this push isn't just coming from the government. Get this. A survey by the Institute of Directors found that a whopping 62% of UK business leaders are in favor of a mandatory digital right-to-work card.
So, why are businesses so keen on this? Well, for them, it's pretty simple. It's all about cutting through that mountain of red tape. They see the way they currently have to check if someone has the right to work as clunky, slow, and just outdated. A single, verifiable digital ID, that promises less paperwork, better accuracy, and a much faster, more modern way to hire people.
And the argument goes way beyond just the office. Major think tanks are looking at digital ID as a potential silver bullet for huge societal issues. The thinking is that it could help get a grip on unauthorized immigration by making it impossible to work or rent without legal status, and at the same time, totally transform public services to make them more efficient.
Okay, but with every promise, there's a potential price. So now we have to flip the coin and look at the other side, the really deep-seated fears about privacy, surveillance, and what civil liberties groups are warning could be the creation of a database state.
And these aren't just fringe worries. Polling from Big Brother Watch shows exactly what keeps people up at night when they think about this. The top 3 concerns? Cybersecurity attacks, the slow erosion of privacy, and of course, the potential for way more government surveillance.
And this right here points to an enormous trust gap. Look at that, a clear majority, 63% of the public simply do not trust the government to keep their personal data safe. And honestly, given past data breaches, that's a massive hurdle for anyone wanting to centralize this much sensitive information.
Critics are warning that the real danger isn't just one giant database, it's the creation of what they call a dossier society. See, that unique ID number would act like a master key, allowing the state to link up all its separate files on you, from the NHS, the tax office, the DWP, you name it. The results? A super detailed, searchable, and permanent record of pretty much everything you do.
And if you think this sounds a little bit like a conspiracy theory, well, history shows us the very real danger of function creep. The ID card from World War II? It started out for rationing and security, but it ended up being used for 38 different things. The national insurance number started just for benefits. Now it's essential for your job and your taxes. The pattern is crystal clear. Systems that are created for one small thing have a habit of growing into something much, much bigger.
Now, beyond these big picture fears of a surveillance state, there's a much more immediate and personal risk. What's the human cost when a mandatory system like this goes wrong or simply doesn't work for everybody?
This flowchart really shows the fundamental change we're talking about. In the current system, up top, you can see that UK citizens have lots of different ways to prove who they are. But look at the proposal on the bottom. Everyone, citizens included, gets funneled through one single mandatory digital gateway. And if you can't get through that gate for whatever reason, you risk being totally locked out.
So, who are the people most likely to be left behind? Well, first, you've got those facing digital exclusion, the elderly or disabled who might not be online.
Then there are people who get locked out because of a simple computer error, which we've already seen happen with the UK's e-visa system, leaving people stranded. And of course, anyone who's wrongly denied services because of a mistake in their data, a mistake that could be a nightmare to fix.
And this leads to really serious concerns about racial bias. Dr. Shabna Begum from the Runnymede Trust puts it bluntly. She warns that a digital ID system will turbocharge a culture where ethnic minorities are far more likely to be stopped and asked to prove their right to get basic services just because of what they look like.
And this just puts the two arguments in stark contrast. On the one hand, supporters claim a single system could actually reduce discrimination. But on the other hand, critics point to what happens in countries like France, where people of North African descent say they're asked for their ID constantly. The fear is that instead of solving discrimination, a digital ID will just make it more efficient. Which brings us to the final trade-off. This is really the core conflict at the heart of this entire debate. What kind of country would a system like this actually create? For opponents, this isn't just about technology. They argued that a mandatory digital ID would fundamentally and maybe irreversibly change the relationship between you, the individual, and the state. They say it represents a massive shift, a move away from a tradition of inherent freedom, where you can just go about your life unless you break a law, to what many call a papers, please society. A society where your access to even basic services isn't a right anymore, but a permission that you have to keep asking for and that has to be granted over and over again. Which leaves us with the ultimate question. The promise is a more efficient, streamlined, modern Britain. The potential cost is a huge step change in surveillance and the erosion of a long-held freedom. So, efficiency versus freedom. What is the right price to pay?